Hello everybody, and well, today's video, as you can probably tell, is about the Amos Yee video. Videos! Because today he just released another video about paedophilia. It seems that since he's left Singapore and gone to the land of freedom and hamburgers, America, he's decided that the quest should not be freedom of speech, not atheism or anything like that. Instead, he's kind of picked up where he left off and wants to fight for paedophile rights. Yes, paedophile rights. He thinks that there's some kind of oppressed group in the world and that the treatment of paedophiles is unfair, it's cruel, and we wouldn't accept it from any other group. And well, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but I would just like to say that this video is not going to be the usual videos that you've been seeing responding to him as of late. Instead, it will just be a general talk about the points that I've seen his video too many times. I've seen responses to his video too many times. And I think let's just talk about the topic itself and what he's brought up and how you guys can deal with this kind of thing. Now, he is right in saying that in general, people of all cultures, it's not just here in the West, it's not just in America, it's not just in the UK, it's not just in France and Germany and Belgium, and it's everywhere. We treat the subject taboo, and for good reason, and we're very irrational in regards to discussions about it and how we deal with it. And I agree that yes, we do treat it irrationally. We don't really treat it logically, although I do believe our laws are based on the logic, and I do think that they are right. But I also do think that there's a reason why it is irrational and illogical, because there's something innate, as V said in his response to Amos. It's innate. There's something just horrible and disgusting about the thought of somebody being a paedophile or doing something to a kid like that, because that's not natural. That fetish, because as much as Amos Yee is implying in his video, it is not asexuality, it is a fetish. That kind of fetish it's antithetical to most human beings, because most normal human beings are sexually attracted to adults, not children. Children are not meant to be in that position in the first place. They should not be fucked. They should not be fucked with. It's something innate to us. It's like bestiality as well. Nobody likes the idea of having sex with animals. But for some reason, Amos Yee thinks there's nothing wrong with having sex with babies, let alone toddlers or children. It beggars belief. But yeah, I do agree that there needs to be a more logical, rational take on the situation and how we deal with it. I do agree that we shouldn't just outright condemn every single one. However, they should all be treated with suspicion, and they should not be given excuses. If anything, if they refuse to receive help for their condition and are caught doing bad things, they should be sent to prison. Now, I don't know about chemical castration. That shit should be down to the governments and other people to decide. But if we can't fix these people with psychological treatment, then I guess there's no real alternative, is there? They should all be treated with suspicion, because as much as these people at Amos Yee claim that most are not going to act on these feelings, how do we know that? How come we continuously see young or middle-aged female teachers abusing their station and grooming and having sex with young boys and occasionally girls in schools? How come we constantly see paedophile rings being outed in not just daily life, but even in Hollywood? The problem isn't as big as, say, a lot of the fame mongering in the media will have you believe, to the point where men with their children are being labelled as paedophiles simply by doing parenting things, normal father things. But there is a good reason to treat all paedophiles with suspicion, because you never know when or if they will act on this. You can't trust them with kids. As V said rather bluntly, who would you rather trust? The person who is blue ball free and not frustrated and doesn't like kids with your children, or the one who has blue balls and is a paedophile? I'll leave that up to you. Now, another thing was, he thinks that it's okay for the people who are paedophiles to have access to child pornography, and he also thinks at the same time that child rape is wrong and that consensual sex is okay, even though kids can't consent, but he thinks that they can. Well, you can't have both, Amos. You can't have both, alright? But that's the whole thing. He's trying to get you to agree with little things, like, yes, we are irrational, but with good reason. We should treat it more logical. Maybe we should not just automatically throw them in jail, but seek treatment for these people, though he did not argue that. Again, if he could, he would argue that in order to get you to agree with him slowly but surely, as Mr. Metric has said. Jim, Amos can't have both. You can't just say, yeah, child rape should remain illegal, but we can still access child pornography. I mean, he does know how child pornography is created, right? He does know that it's created usually through child trafficking. You know, these kids are slaves. They're practically slaves, and they are kidnapped or they are brought up in this horrible situation by these sick, perverted people, and they're filmed and are actually being raped. But you admitted to that they are being raped, but apparently it should be okay to view it, because apparently just viewing it isn't going to make you a paedophile. Well, you know, you can sit there and say that it's the same as playing a violent video game, it's the same as watching a violent film. Well, it isn't, because when I'm watching, as you mentioned in your video, ISIS fighters beheading journalists, I don't have my cock out ready to masturbate to it. That's what paedophiles do with pornography. It's two completely different things, and that won't make me accept it. Now, for some reason, he doesn't seem to advocate for lolly, or that kind of grey area where, you know, it's just pictures and 3D renderings. Now, I've heard that potentially if this was to be more open and available, this might curb some of their desires. This might stop them from going out there and seeking illegal child prostitution or illegal child porn. If they can get access to the fake lolly type stuff, it might actually help them. It'll give them a release. Now, I don't know, maybe Amos should be advocating for that. That would actually make his position a lot better, but apparently, no, we should just let the exploitation of children be legal, or at least decriminalised. I can't quite tell what he wanted. And another just absolutely balmy thing that he said was, well, if an infant, a toddler, can consent to playing with trucks and Hello Kitty, and not only that, but suck their thumb and eat stuff, that apparently that means they consent to sex. I mean, he clearly has no idea about child psychology and how children work and how the human mind develops. Because even when we have people at the age of consent, whether that be 18 to 12 or 13, whatever it is in your country, because it isn't all the same, and he is right in saying that it is subjective, although I'd rather say it's more arbitrary than necessarily subjective. Your brain technically isn't still developed until roughly your mid-20s, maybe even 30s in some cases, although I don't know the exact age, because everybody is different. It is, of course, an individual thing. Puberty is an individual thing, as we know, and we can still grant him that yes, there will be outliers. Jeff Holiday granted him that, but the problem is all his examples, and we'll get to them, were anecdotal. But anyway, knowing about development, knowing about how children are, they can't consent to that knowingly. Babies especially can't consent to that, because they will just do whatever an adult tells them. That's a natural thing that kids do. Kids are stupid, alright? Kids are not smart. There are very few kids who are smart. Now, there was a girl in the news recently who is now apparently a 7-year-old neurologist or working in a lab. Now, I don't know how smart she actually is, but she's what I would consider an outlier. Now, that doesn't mean she's mature. That just means she's very smart in one field. Just because a baby can consent to eating doesn't mean that they can consent to sex. In fact, they're not even consenting to eating. A baby will just eat anything that you give it, because it's a baby. That's what they do. They put themselves into dangerous positions constantly, and it's up to the parent to protect that baby, because the baby doesn't know any better. We're a very slow developing species. The idea, therefore, that a kid from the age of 0 to 10 or 12 can knowingly consent is a ridiculous notion, because they're so easily exploited at that age. They believe in the most ridiculous things like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. Of course, they'll probably be open to somebody tricking them into being groomed. That's why we call it grooming, because these kids are being fooled, they're being tricked, they're being prepared for this horrible shit that is about to happen. And that's why it's illegal, because it's easily abused. Parents and other adults have an incredible amount of power over children, and that is why we have these age of consent laws, so that this power cannot be abused. But he does not understand that. Maybe he does understand it because he's not that stupid, but at this point, 4 videos in, I think it's pretty sure that he isn't that bright, and he isn't being edgy. He is deadly serious. Now, another thing that I touched upon was the thing about his anecdotal evidence and touching on NAMBLA talking points about how man-boy love and pederasty and all that other stuff has had stories where it was perfectly consensual and everything was fine and therefore it should be legal, even though we all know that these are kids, or are they kids, I don't know, who apparently are outliers and have, strangely enough, the maturity of an adult to make these informed decisions. Now, even if these kids existed, that does not mean therefore it should be legal, because that means 98% of kids are still incapable. Therefore, it should still remain illegal for the good of that many. But then again, as Jim said in his live stream, what if this was just paedophiles telling him that just so they could gain access to kids within his social circle? They could just be bullshitting him. These are anecdotes. These are not evidence. This does not prove your point. This actually, in many ways, refutes your point, because what he did in Jeff Holiday's stream was just completely and utterly reject any of the statistics, any of the data, any of the studies that Jeff brought up, but was okay with the anecdotal evidence. That wouldn't fly in, say, a debate with a Muslim that he would have had, because if a Muslim was to do that kind of thing, because let's be honest, quoting from a holy book is anecdotal, he would quite rightly say that is not evidence of, say, for example, if God exists, or if we should do this to a certain demographic because God apparently said it in a book that was written by people 1,000 years ago. But hey, I digress. Now, some people brought up the whole slippery slope thing. This is actually going beyond Amos and more into the responses to him, and they were saying that, oh, the slippery slope is real. This is just the left because Amos Yee jumps between libertarian and anarcho-communism like the wind, much like Stephen Molyneux, although he doesn't go to communism, he just goes wherever you can get the money. They believe that this is evidence of the slippery slope, and that the slippery slope isn't necessarily a fallacy. Well, I don't think this is ever going to happen. I don't think paedophilia will ever be made legal. There always will be people who will try to make it legal. NAMBLA has been around for God knows how many years, 40 years, 50 years. They've tried to attach themselves like parasites to the LGBT community, and at the time that was the GLB community, or the GLB rights activist group. They've always tried to be like parasites with those people. And just like how everyday normal people have for God knows how many years, generations, thousands of years, excused female paedophiles, this shit is always going to happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that governments are going to be swayed. I do not think that normal people would accept that male paedophiles especially should be allowed to do what they want to do. I don't think that's ever going to happen, because there is something innate about that, and if a government was to do that, there would be riots in the streets. So I do believe at the moment it's still in fallacy mode, but you know, I guess I'm an optimist when it comes to that kind of thing, because I do believe in the end that this strange paradox when it comes to paedophilia, how we feel about it, it comes from a logically sound place but is expressed irrationally. This fear, this concern will stop it from being made legal. But anyway guys, that's the end of the video, and until next time, I'll see you all later.